A billion-dollar question, India's stance on Pakistan's IMF loan. On May 10, 2025, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, made a significant decision. They approved a $1.3 billion loan for Pakistan. This loan was granted under the Resilience and Sustainability Facility, also known as the RSF. The RSF aims to help countries deal with climate change and other long-term challenges. However, India's response to this decision was, well, noteworthy. India chose to abstain from the vote, raising eyebrows and sparking debate. India's abstention wasn't just a passive act, it was a powerful statement. It signaled India's deep concerns about the loan and its potential implications. India's decision was rooted in various factors. These included the effectiveness of past IMF programs in Pakistan and concerns about terrorism. India's abstention has put the spotlight on the complex relationship between the two South Asian neighbours. It has also raised questions about the role of global financial institutions in a volatile geopolitical landscape. Pakistan's troubled economic past. A legacy of IMF bailouts. To understand India's stance, we need to look at Pakistan's economic history. Pakistan has a long history of economic instability. It has often found itself on the brink of crisis. To stay afloat, Pakistan has repeatedly turned to the IMF for help. Over the past few decades, Pakistan has received numerous bailouts from the IMF. In fact, Pakistan has been a frequent visitor to the IMF's doorstep. This constant need for financial assistance has raised concerns. Critics argue that these bailouts have not addressed the root causes of Pakistan's economic woes. They say that Pakistan has not done enough to reform its economy and achieve sustainable growth. Instead, it has become trapped in a cycle of debt and dependence. India shares these concerns. It believes that simply throwing money at the problem will not solve Pakistan's economic crisis. Have IMF loans helped Pakistan? India's doubts and concerns. India's decision to abstain from the IMF vote was partly driven by its skepticism about the effectiveness of past IMF programs in Pakistan. India argues that these programs have not brought about the desired results. They point to the fact that Pakistan has received 28 IMF programs over the past 35 years. This includes 4 programs in the last 5 years alone. Despite this, Pakistan's economy continues to be fragile. India questions whether these loans have led to any significant or lasting reforms in Pakistan. They believe that Pakistan has not done enough to address its structural economic problems. These problems include issues like corruption, a lack of transparency, and a weak tax base. India is concerned that the latest IMF loan will suffer the same fate as its predecessors. They fear it will be used to paper over cracks rather than address the fundamental flaws in Pakistan's economy. The men in green and the economy. India's concerns over military influence. Another major concern for India is the Pakistani military's outsized role in the country's economy. The military establishment in Pakistan wields considerable influence. This influence extends beyond security matters and into the economic sphere. The military controls vast business empires and enjoys significant political clout. India argues that this dominance of the military undermines economic transparency and accountability. They believe that the military's involvement in the economy creates an uneven playing field. This discourages foreign investment and hinders private sector growth. India is concerned that the IMF loan will end up indirectly funding the Pakistani military. They argue that a portion of the loan could be diverted towards military spending. This would further strengthen the military's grip on the economy. Section 5. Terrorism and trust, a major roadblock in India-Pakistan relations. India's abstention from the IMF vote cannot be viewed in isolation from the broader geopolitical context. The relationship between India and Pakistan has been marred by decades of mistrust and hostility. A key point of contention has been the issue of cross-border terrorism. India accuses Pakistan of harboring and supporting terrorist groups that operate on Indian soil. These groups have been responsible for numerous attacks in India, resulting in the loss of innocent lives. India believes that Pakistan has not taken sufficient action to dismantle these terrorist infrastructures within its borders. Given this history, India has expressed serious reservations about providing financial assistance to a state that they consider a sponsor of terrorism. Section 6. Global implications. India's abstention sends a strong signal. India's decision to abstain from the IMF vote holds significance beyond the immediate context of the loan to Pakistan. It carries broader implications for international norms and the functioning of global financial institutions. By taking a stand, India has sent a strong signal to the international community. They have highlighted the need for greater accountability and transparency in dealing with countries that support terrorism. India's move could encourage other countries to take a more critical stance when it comes to providing financial assistance to nations with questionable records on terrorism. This could potentially influence the lending practices of international financial institutions. It could lead them to adopt stricter criteria and impose greater scrutiny on loan recipients. This could have far-reaching consequences for countries that rely heavily on external financing. Section 7. The Neighbourhood Watch. Analysing India's concerns. India's abstention from the IMF vote has sparked a debate about its motivations and the potential consequences of its actions. Some observers view India's move as an attempt to isolate Pakistan diplomatically and economically. They argue that India is using its growing influence on the global stage to pressure Pakistan into changing its behaviour. Others, however, believe that India's concerns about terrorism and the effectiveness of IMF programs in Pakistan are genuine. They point to the long history of conflict and mistrust between the two countries as evidence of the deep-seated nature of these concerns. They argue that India is simply acting in its own national interest by trying to prevent further instability in its neighbourhood. Section 8. Beyond the blame game, finding solutions for Pakistan's crisis. While India's concerns about Pakistan's economic and political situation are understandable, it's essential to move beyond the blame game and explore potential solutions. Pakistan's economic crisis is a complex issue with deep-rooted structural problems. Addressing these problems will require a multi-pronged approach that involves both domestic reforms and international support. Pakistan needs to take concrete steps to address issues like corruption, improve governance, and create a more conducive environment for business and investment. At the same time, the international community needs to continue providing financial and technical assistance to help Pakistan overcome its economic challenges. However, this assistance should be conditional on Pakistan's commitment to implementing meaningful reforms. Section 9. The future of India-Pakistan relations. A long road ahead. India's abstention from the IMF vote on the loan to Pakistan underscores the deep mistrust that continues to plague relations between the two South Asian neighbours. The issue of terrorism remains a major stumbling block, preventing any meaningful dialogue or cooperation. Until Pakistan takes concrete and verifiable steps to address India's concerns about terrorism, it is unlikely that there will be any significant improvement in bilateral relations. The path to peace and stability in South Asia requires both India and Pakistan to show flexibility and a willingness to engage in dialogue. The international community can play a constructive role by encouraging both countries to resolve their differences through peaceful means. However, the onus ultimately lies on India and Pakistan to bridge their differences and create a more peaceful and prosperous future for their people.